All right. Hi, everybody. How you doing today? Thank you so much for coming on a Monday. This is the first time in 3 years we've done it on a Monday. I'm really surprised that you all showed up. That's awesome. Thank you. After a long holiday weekend, typically we do these on Thursdays or Fridays. We were actually scheduled to have this last Thursday. However, a group of city employees flew to Denver to represent the city for the All America Cities Award, which I am happy to say we won. Yes. So it was actually really cool. So I went there to represent utility systems because a couple of our projects were included in the entry. So our septic to sewer conversion program, as well as our water quality project. So that was a big part of the entry. So a lot of it was on like environmental sustainability and things like that. So again, on behalf of the city, so it was narrowed down to 20 finalists and then 10 winners, and we were one of those 10 winners. So that's, yeah, very cool. Good job, Port St. Lucie. So that's why we're here doing this on a Monday. So thank you so much for being here. My name is Jenny Tomes. I'm the one who sends the emails. But I do community education and outreach on behalf of Utility Systems. So as you know, we host these lunch and learn events every quarter. This one's actually really timely today because we're talking about our free chlorine and flushing program. That begins tomorrow. That begins on July 8th. So I thought this was a good time to talk about it and just to give you more information about what that program entails. So before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to acknowledge E1 and Joe. Joe, can you raise your hand back there? Without E1, this would just be learn. There'd be no lunch. So learn is not as marketable as lunch and learn. So thanks to Joe and thanks to E1, we are able to eat and learn at the same time. So thank you. Thank you, E1. Let me grab my pointer here. All right, so there's me. You guys know who I am. Today we have Dan Burdett with us. He's the acting superintendent of our water treatment plants. How many years? 22 years, so no slouch. And then Sean Meehan, he's a lab technician and a licensed water treatment plant operator. So don't let that young face fool you. He's got many years in it as well. 6, 7? 7.5 years. 7.5 years with us. So these guys know this flushing program, this free chlorination program, they know it inside and out. So I'm going to kind of set them up with questions, and then they're kind of going to go back and forth and kind of help us better understand. It's not that complicated, but I really wanted to get through it all so you all had a very clear understanding of what this is, why it matters, why it's important, kind of what you as our customers can expect. So we'll go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, our goal in utility systems is to provide excellent customer service. That's it, right? Excellent water and wastewater treatment services, and then, of course, provide safe drinking water. So that's going to be our focus today. So my first question to Dan, we start with Dan. What changes at the water treatment plant, right? So we know that it's going to be something with the water. I would love Dan to explain just simply what changes at the water treatment plant during this time.
So the only change that we do at the water treatment plant is actually turn off the ammonia. What we do is disinfect the water with chloramines, and at this time, for a 2-week period, we'll be shutting off the ammonia. It's following the AWWA standards. It's the best drinking water practices. We do it annually, and we flush the system throughout. You might get a taste or an odor that comes out of it. You can let your water sit on the counter for about a half hour, stick it in the fridge, you can stir it up, and it'll get that taste or the odor out. You'll also see the flushing at night that we're actually pulling it throughout our system.
And again, we'll be going through all of this. So if you have any questions, probably it'll be answered. So if you want to just kind of hang on to your question, if it doesn't get answered, we'll save those toward the end. Let's see. So Sean, let's talk now about what tests are done kind of leading up to this point, because we've talked about this, but this is becoming an annual program. We'll talk more about the other utilities that do this kind of more frequently than we do, but this is becoming an annual program, and it's going to be about this time every year. But if you could talk to them a little bit about kind of what like leads up to this and kind of the sampling and stuff that's done on your end.
Yeah, of course. So every month we go out and we sample at least 150 sites for total coliform. Total coliform is anything in the water that would make you sick. Um, the disinfection in the water, the chloramines, prevents any bacteria from growing in the system. We know that the water leaving the plant is safe, but we don't know, or we can't actively prove that nobody's tapping into our lines in the distribution system unless we're actively testing and making sure the water is safe. So what we do in the lab is we go out and we grab a sample from the site, we dechlorinate the water, and then we give the any bacteria in the water its best chance at thriving so that we can see if there is anything in the water that would pose a risk to public health and safety. Um, we also test for the disinfection byproducts on a quarterly basis. Those are anything in the drinking water that would make you sick, that are caused by the disinfection we use. Um, all of the results for those are on our website. If you look at the 2024 water quality report, yeah, so pretty much when we go out there, we have to make sure that the chlorine's between zero point 0.6 to 4.0 milligrams per liter. Um, and then if it's below zero point 0.6, then we have to get a flush in to get the chlorine up to make sure that the whole system has adequate disinfection. Prior to the yearly flushing, there were some problem areas in the city that would slowly go closer and closer to the zero point 0.6, which is why we started doing yearly as a preemptive rather than a post fix. Because before we started doing it 2 years ago, we used to do it every 4 to 5 years when we started to notice dropouts. So if you wait until there's dropouts, then you have to flush for longer, and you could also have disinfection byproducts grow in the lines. So thankfully, we don't have anything crazy going on. Um, the disinfection byproducts we test for THMs and HAAs, total trihalomethanes and halicylic acids. They just organic matter kind of gets in with the chloramines and it can create those if there is enough organic matter. But with our flushing system, we're getting any organic matter out of the distribution system. So prior to the free chlorination every year, our cross-connection crews would flush throughout the distribution system as needed, but now we're having to do that less and less since we're doing it on an annual basis.
So Dan, you mentioned AWWA, the American Water Works Association. So is this what we're doing right now? What's starting tomorrow, the free chlorine and flushing program, is that required? Is that mandatory for us to do, or is it just recommended?
No, it's not mandatory for us to do. It's a recommendation that comes from AWWA, also DEP that also recommends that you do it. It's on our sanitary survey that we do every 5 years. They'll ask you how many times you've done a free chlorine flush or anything like that. So anything that we're doing is just to stay ahead of the curve, right? We want to be proactive instead of reactive, just like Sean was saying before. So the benefits of the free chlorine is that we're actually able to get anything that might be growing in the pipes, anything that might be an issue out of the pipework. All right. We use chloramines right now. That just means chlorine and ammonia added together. Don't do that in your sink, please, because it'll have major issues. But we add it in the water. So it does stay in solution when we do add it in the water. But our system is quite large. So with the system being as large as ours is, you have dead end points and you have water that could stay in there up to 10 to 12 days in our system. So when that happens, your chlorine starts to dissipate out and your ammonia takes over. And any kind of free ammonia that's in the system is food for bacteria. So we don't want that to grow. Our flushing system is pretty extensive throughout the city. You'll see that we even have automatic flushers in areas where it just looks like a weird looking fire hydrant maybe, and it just dumps out at night. And that's how we flush the system. But we have a crew that goes out and maintains the system, just like Sean was saying. We don't wait till the residual gets low, though, like that. We average about a 3.5 milligrams per liter that we send out to the customer. So if we see that drop around a 2, we're going to start flushing in that area and make sure that we get that residual up in those particular spots.
That's perfect. And that sort of leads into the next questions with how does this program help the distribution system? So there, I know that we're throwing a lot of numbers around. We're trying to take it real slow because my head, I'm better with words than numbers. They start talking numbers and I just turn it off. But he talked about our vast distribution system. Our distribution system is 1,400 miles long. Port St. Lucie's not 1,400 miles, right? But our distribution system, all the pipe underground, is 1,400 miles long. So just to give you an idea of how far that is, if we were to unearth that and lay that end to end, that would get you up into Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it's a vast system, right? So thank you for reiterating the benefits of doing this. And again, I get questions a lot like, is your water safe? They test all the time. We are required to do testing. Again, this free chlorine and flushing program, it's not mandatory, but we're doing it just, again, preemptive and to be proactive. So I just really want to reinforce that this is something that we're doing proactive. We don't have to, but we're doing it to take good care of that 1,400 miles of distribution system, because let's be clear, people are not moving out of Port St. Lucie, are they? They're moving into Port St. Lucie more and more and more every day. So we want to make sure, again, that when that water leaves the plant at the very end of that 1,400 miles, that water is still safe and good for you to consume and to drink. So let's see. I'm moving around too much and I'm leaving stuff all over the place. So can either of you talk more about, so it's not just us, we're not the only city, municipality that utilizes this program. Who else would like, do you want to talk?
So if you go to St. Lucie West, they free chlorinate all year long. Their distribution system is much smaller than ours, so they're able to free chlorinate year long without having to rechlorinate the water in the system. If we were to try and do free chlorination all year long, we would have to rechlorinate at our repump stations. So if you go to St. Lucie West and you drink the restaurant tap water, you're drinking the same free chlorine that you would drink when we're doing our free chlorination. Stewart also does free chlorination twice a year. They schedule it in one half of the year and then the other half. It's a recommended practice, and the water is still safe to drink.
Has anybody experienced that? Have you ever had tap water at a St. Lucie West restaurant and noticed? Because once I found out about this and I went to a restaurant there and I thought, oh my God, because I love tasting tap water in different places. It's a weird thing I have. I like to compare it. But it's definitely noticeable. It's definitely noticeable. And they, so again, if you're kind of moving throughout the city, you might notice a difference there. Okay. So this is the big question. So while we are free chlorinating for the next 2 weeks, is our water safe to consume?
Absolutely. Our water is always safe to consume. I want to reiterate on the testing. Sean works in the lab and they go out into the distribution system and they test the water. I represent the operations staff. Our operations staff is testing the water every 2 hours. We're actually making adjustments every time there's something a little off or a little over. We're constantly testing the water. We would never send anything out to our public that was not safe. We'd shut the plants down, dump the water, and then reiterate, start going all over again. We've never faced that. All through the hurricanes that we've been through, it's kind of a feather in the cap of all the operations staff that we've never had to put out a boil water note. Boil water notices come out when you're 20 psi or below. We maintain a higher pressure throughout our system to make sure you maintain the same pressure at your home. We do lower the pressure during storms just so we don't have any problems with pipes popping out of the ground. If we were to run our same pressure and we get so saturated the way we are, we'd have issues with that. So we're always on the forefront of thinking ahead, right? We never want to be behind that. We want to make sure that all the time when you turn on that tap, you have no problem drinking that water, making your coffee, making your tea, whatever you want to make with that. I hear a lot of complaints. I'm originally from New York. I hear a lot of complaints. People from New York, they say the water tastes weird down here. The main reason it tastes that way is because it's warm coming out of the tap. We average about 77 degrees Fahrenheit is coming out of your tap. Our pipe work is kind of not buried, right? If you go up into New York, the northern states and stuff, that pipe work is 4 to 6 feet under the ground because of the frost lines. so your water comes out of your tap naturally cooler. So that's a big misconception here that the water's horrible because it tastes weird. Well, I don't drink warm water. I don't know a lot of people that do drink warm water. If that would taste weird to me, just drinking warm water. Take that water, stick it in your fridge for a little bit, add some ice to it. You'd be surprised. It doesn't taste that bitter, as people would say. We use reverse osmosis in 2 of our plants, and we also have a lime softening plant at the other one of our plants. Reverse osmosis will strip everything out of the water. Read your water bottles. If you guys have water bottles at your house, it says purified reverse osmosis with minerals added. That's exactly what we do. But yet people grab that water bottle that's regulated by the FDA, and we're regulated by EPA, which means it's a lot more stringent than what you guys get when you drink your water bottle with all those plastics and contaminants in it. You let it sit in your car, and then you have no problem wolfing that down, and then you go turn on your tap and say, this is horrible, right? That's not right. During this free chlorine burn, you feel free, do everything you need to do. There's going to be no difference in the system. All we're doing is protecting the system for a future. So if you want to bathe, run your laundry in it, do everything that you normally do, there's no difference in it. You might smell that little odor when you first turn it on. Let it sit on the counter for a little bit, stick it in the fridge. You'll get over that smell real quick, and then you won't have any issues with the water at all. Oh, just to make sure, we do notify all the dialysis because they do strip our water out to make it pure. They need everything out when they run dialysis on people. So they have to change their systems up a little bit. They're used to dealing with chloramines, so now we're giving them free chlorine. So while we do that, they have to make sure they adjust their little treatment plants at their place also. Also, tropical fish stores, different things like that. We send out notifications to, and we let them know that we're just changing our method of how we're treating the water at this time. It's no different, just they have to adjust their methods of how they treat our water also.
So the free chlorination is going to be from July 8th to July 22nd. And as Dan said, when he opened up for us, they're just going to turn the ammonia off. And then once it's finished on the 22nd, they're going to turn the ammonia back on. You might notice the free chlorination for a little longer than July 22nd, depending on where you are in the system. Maybe July 23rd, the free chlorine smell will be like fully gone. But the water will be back to normal after the 22nd. Oh, and the hydrant flushing that we do it both during the day and at night. We cover all of the city to make sure that we get everything out of the lines, like all of the chloramines out of the lines, as well as the free ammonia.
Because do you know the exact number of fire hydrants? Last time I looked, I think it was close to 7,000 fire hydrants. And from my understanding, that's just a way to quickly move the water through the system.
The fire hydrants, we're actually strategically looking throughout the city to pull it from major lines. So when you see the flushing going on, it might be one here and it could be one down the block somewhere. We're just trying to revert the water to make sure it goes the right way and that we're pulling that water out of those lines. So that's why you won't see every fire hydrant flushing, but you'll see a majority of them throughout your little area or as you drive around the city. Most of this stuff will be done at night, so it's not to bother people and have any issues. But you might come out in the morning and you'll see a big puddle in your street. And all that was just the fire hydrant flushing. What we do is we scour it. So when you first turn on a fire hydrant, you're going to really flush that out hard. Then you turn it down, so it's just coming out and pressing. You take a sample off of that, you let it run for a couple hours, you come back and you resample again, just to see what happened during that time of what we pulled through the water and how it ran throughout that night. Sometimes we'll have to go back to certain hydrants and reflush again, but that's all about just pulling the water throughout our system. As you can imagine, you go down your block, you see dead ends, you see spots that have cul-de-sacs, you see different areas, and as the city grew, we expanded into those areas. So right now we don't have a lot of dead ends like we used to have, but we still have throughout the system that we have to maintain and kind of flush direction is what it's for.
Perfect. Thank you. And then, Sean, can you talk about the types? Because we realize you do testing. Is there anything additional? Do you do any additional testing during this time period?
For the most part, things stay pretty routine when we do the free chlorination. But when we go out to sample the houses, we do switch the type of indicator we use from total chlorine to free chlorine to see what the free chlorination levels are. While the cross-connection crew is out there flushing the hydrants, they also monitor the chlorine level to make sure that it's within our parameters. It's pretty similar to the total chlorine levels. Total chlorine is allowed to be 0.6 to 4.0 milligrams per liter, and free chlorine is allowed to be 0.2 to 4.0 milligrams per liter. So, as Dan was saying earlier, the amount of chlorine we're putting in the water isn't increasing. We're just no longer adding the ammonia for the week and a half, 2 week period.
I know, folks, that was a lot of information. You've got full bellies. You're like, gosh, that's a lot going on here. I'm getting sleepy. But do you have any questions? Is there anything you want us to repeat? Is there anything you want us to go over? Yes.
Certainly. The first one is that I heard that the water is blended from the 3 different plants that you have. Where does the water come from these 3 plants?
I couldn't get this, but it's hard. 2 of the plants are reverse osmosis plants, right? They come from the Floridan aquifer. The Floridan aquifer is about 1,350 feet deep, and that's where we're grabbing that water from. One of the other treatment plants is a lime softening plant. The lime softening plant, their average wells are about 100 to 120 feet deep, and that's where we're pulling that from. Everything is groundwater, no superficial water whatsoever. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Second question.
So none of the groundwater is coming from canals, which are then cleaned or anything like that. Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, when you are cleaning the hydrants, letting the water out of the hydrants, where does that water go? Does it end up in the St. Lucie River and estuaries? We have a problem where there is so much of it, it's going to dilute the brackish water that is necessary for our fish and wildlife that are in there.
Most of it evaporates, I'll be honest with you. It goes through the swale system. It does make it out to certain canals and fingers, but the amount that we're flushing on the night and as we're doing the system isn't harmful at all by the time it gets out to the brackish water. The brackish water, let me explain. Florida was originally designed, right, as fingers. So everything from the Lake O down through was fingers, and that was all different canals. And all these canals made their way down to the Everglades area. And as the Everglades acted as a natural filter for everything. As the construction went on, the years went on, and everything that we had here, a lot of these canals and a lot of these different retention areas got diverted. So for it to get out to the estuary is pretty far for it to actually make it there. I also run a water quality program out at McCarty Ranch, and we actually take water from the C23 canal and we put it into retention area. So when that flushing is going on, we're also pumping too. And we're pulling that water out of the C23 and we're placing it into retention pond. Eventually that'll be used for a water treatment plant, not right now. But that's what the thinking of Port St. Lucie was always on the forefront. We started doing this probably 6 years ago in that area. And if you guys notice when you drive over a lot of these little areas where you have, especially on Port St. Lucie Boulevard, you have a little canal running through. and it was that red tide and the fish kill and all that stuff was going on. Well, you haven't noticed that in many years, and that's because we at Port St. Lucie, we're pulling that out of the water, right? Our intent is that you don't have that extra water with runoff, with excessive rains, any kind of flushing, any kind of things that might leach into that system. We're all about thinking about the estuaries. We're all about thinking about what's going into the Indian River Lagoon. And by doing that, we ensure that the nature and the future is there for everybody that wants to enjoy this community. Exactly. It does go back.
Thank you. Okay. Third question. There you go.
Well, you answered me as far as what we're doing right now, but when the water is coming from the C-23 canal into McCarty Ranch, and that will eventually be used, what are they going to do to clean that? Are they pumping it down and leaving it to get cleaned by the soil or whatever? The reason I'm asking is because they are finding, because we send our biosolids over to farms and ranches, that when that washes down from heavy rains, it does have human hormones and PFAS. They are finding that in the water. So I want to make sure that when we convert and start, because we're putting in so many homes, we need to have some more water. We won't have enough. What will they do to make sure that that is removed so we're not getting that?
So we do have a couple of plans for the future, and nothing is set in stone just as of yet, but it's called a Fort-End Aquifer Recovery System. So as we're getting into the later stages of maybe making this a plant, before that, we're going to have excess water. So we'll pump that back down into the earth, and that'll actually recharge the aquifer. So, and then after that, if we converse to a surface water treatment plant, it'll be fully treated before it goes out. There's a lot of municipalities, I'll say, and I won't name too many of them, but I was just speaking to this gentleman about a couple of them, that all they do is filter the water. So they'll take surface water, they filter it, they add chlorine to it, they'll add ammonia to it, and then they'll send it out to the customer. We're in no way of doing that. Not with all the regulations that are moving forward. You mentioned PFAS and other things like that. That is still a bridge of regulations right now. There hasn't anything been set in stone, but Port St. Lucie is ahead of that curve. We're always ahead of that curve when it comes to things like that. So what we want to make sure is there's no contaminants leaving our plants. Everything will be run through a water treatment plant that is sufficient enough to make sure. RO, so you know, an RO plant, it strips everything out. There is nothing left when you come back. It's 99.9% removals of all contaminants that are in the water. So when we turn to a surface water plant, like I said, nothing is set in stone on what we're doing right now. As technology emerges, we'll be emerging too. Just so you guys know too, we're in the phases of building another reverse osmosis plant, and it'll be behind Traditions. Discovery Way is kind of break through and go out the range line over in that area. Right now it's a pumping station, and that'll be in turn a 30 million gallon a day water treatment plant. Right now we have a 22.5 million gallon a day. We have an 11.15 million gallon a day and an 8 million gallon a day lime softening plant. So just so everybody can wrap their head around it, we sell about 21 million gallons a day that goes out to the customer. So we'll be building that new RO plant to kind of help out with all the population as we're growing exponentially. It's crazy. It's crazy over in that area. It was a pumping station, and the director before this director, he put that pumping station there in 2008, and everybody said, "Why are you putting a station in the middle of the woods?" And he said, "Trust me, you're going to need it." That guy now is a city manager, so you can see why he was the good thinking that he had and the forefront that he had. But all our managementship, they also carry that same role. And we're always thinking about the future. And the last thing Port St. Lucie wants to do is run out of water, right? We'll be all over the place, but we would never do that. We're always thinking ahead. It happened during actually Rosser, when Rosser went on fire, right? We didn't run out of water, they ran out of hydrants. That's really what the issue was. They still had the water, they just had no way of getting it there, right? So that's why we put all those different hydrants in that area to make sure, that was it. I hope I answered your question. A 100%. Our surface water gets tested consistently. We w- we specifically look for all those items. Yes, we make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we got a question.
Thank you. We're gonna go on vacation from July 9th until the 30th. So when we come back, for how long do you suggest that we let the water run before we can drink it?
So anytime you leave the house for more than a week or so and the water's not being used, we do recommend flushing the tap for at least 15, 20 minutes just to make sure you get fresh water in. Because the water won't necessarily be unsafe to drink. It just won't be pleasant since it's been sitting for so long. So like flushing your bathtubs and your shower for 15, 20 minutes should really get everything fresh into the house. And that's recommended anytime you go on vacation away from the house and nobody's using the water. So, yeah, the best spot is your bathtubs, as Dan just said.
Perfect. Anybody else have a question? Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Comment about going on vacation and water. Ever since a friend of mine went on vacation and his house was flooded because they had a burst pipe, I turn my water off outside before I leave for a week. Just saying.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything? That's a good move.
Hi, I might have missed this in the presentation, but what's the advantage of using chloramine versus chlorine normally, or why don't we just use free chlorine all of the time?
So pretty much our system is too big to really benefit from using free chlorine all the time. If you go somewhere like St. Lucie West, which is just 3 miles long with that many customers, you can do free chlorine all the time because you don't have to keep the residual that high. If we were to do free chlorine all the time, we have 4 repump stations in Port St. Lucie. We would have to chlorinate at the repump stations to keep the levels where we want them to prevent any growth or any smells. So pretty much our distribution system is just a little too big to use free chlorine all the time. So we really do benefit from the chloramines. And also, you don't really get the chlorine smell when you use chlorine. When you use chloramines, you don't get the chlorine smell, which is why we get so many notices about the free chlorine smell.
Yeah, because it's different, right? Like it's just, people are very aware of what's going on at their house. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Okay.
When you say you test the surface water, where do you grab that surface water from?
So we're still in the preemptive stages of that. We're not using McCarty Ranch's water for anything right now. But if we were to, we would just grab from the surface water itself with and if we needed to do something that was like over the span of 24 hours, we have field composite machines which just grab a certain amount of water throughout the day. It just depends on the test you want to run as to whether or not you need to do a composite or a grab. And then we also add different preservatives depending on the test. And a lot of those tests we just send out to a private lab who specializes in stuff like the PFAS and all of the other regulations we have.
Yep.
Well, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for the work that you do. It's a miracle almost getting the water from the ground, from the air to our home. And it's just a lot of work I know that you guys do, and it's appreciated. And I don't think you hear that enough to thank you for it. So thank you.
I've never met that man. He said that I did not prompt him. I did not pay him. No, I had nothing to do with that.
I don't understand any how it's organized. I know that this woman said something about water blending from 3 different plants. Where are they located? Then also I heard something about Port St. Lucie West water tasting different. And how is the city, county divided to accommodate all of the water?
Gotcha. We kind of around our office, we say sort of St. Lucie West is the hole in the donut because they have their own services district. As much as they're part of the county and part of the city, they still kind of have their own. But you want to talk about the plan?
Sure. So the 3 different plants we have, 2 of them are actually located right over here off of Rosso. And the other plant is located right off of Midway Road across from Tropicana. And when we say blending them, they just meet in a certain area. Right now it shifts kind of throughout the system, but the JEA plant, which is off of Midway Road and Tropicana area, makes its way all the way down to, say, Rosso and 25th Street, right there. And also on the other side of the city, it comes all the way up to around, I'd say, Gatlin, Port St. Lucie Boulevard, where the other 2 plants take care of the rest. Mostly the older side of the city, going towards US 1, things like that. So, and then St. Lucie West is not part of us. It's its own entity. They are actually have their own water treatment plant. They serve about 78,000 customers. I think it's around that number that they serve over there. And that's where they have their water treatment plant. So it's totally separate from us. Also, we supply water to Martin County, which is the Martin County Correctional Facility. We actually have a booster station that's there. Martin County couldn't run the water over to them. It was too expensive for them. So we ended up putting a booster station in, and we supply water to the 3 prisons that are over there for that reason, because they couldn't at the time. And we have interconnects with Martin County. We have interconnects with St. Lucie West, and we have interconnects with Fort Pierce. And all that means is if they run out of water, we can open up and supply them, which we have done for Fort Pierce several times. And also St. Lucie West. You can see one of the interconnects if you're driving on Crosstown, and it's on the corner of Crosstown and Cashmere. There's a blue pipe that comes up out of the ground and comes back down. It has valves on either side and a little electrical box that's there. Yes. And the reason why we had to do that is because at one point St. Lucie West ran out of water. They couldn't make water. So we had to put that up in a weekend. And we were able to supply St. Lucie West with water. We supplied Fort Pierce several times. We've never really gotten it the other way. So we mostly go that way. We're building a new interconnect from Martin County off of Becca Road down to where that public is on Verano, over in that area. They're building a new hospital over there, and we're building another interconnect over in that area for Martin County.
Yeah, so we're super good neighbors.
The chlorinated water that you're flushing out goes into the swale. Has anything been done to estimate its effects on the pipes in the swale, especially underneath the drive? I live in South Bend Lake. More than half of the people there have had to pick up their driveway and put in new pipes. I've been trying to get the engineering department to change them to plastic pipes, but my pipe has been in there now 4 years, and it's about gone. Chlorination is rotting apples. Flood management has $30 million a year, and I have no idea what they're doing with it, but our neighborhood, we're getting together to try and do something to stop that now. I don't know if you ever coordinated that with the engineering department, because I see they have started now using plastic pipes for many of their new drains underneath the roads and everything, but they won't let the individuals use. There's something wrong.
I don't know how much of that we can speak to. That's a
One thing I will speak to, though, is the chlorine isn't rotting out your pipe. It's definitely not. It dissipates all so quickly once it hits the air, and it's definitely not. I've lived in Port St. Lucie now 22 years. I have the same pipe underneath my driveway that I've had for 22 years. There's a hydrant right down the road from me. They flush that hydrant consistently all the time. What ended up happening, I think, a lot in Port St. Lucie is these builders use inferior products. My house was built in 2003. All the houses on my block have had the same swales, same liner that goes underneath their houses ever since I've seen all the houses get built around me, and I've seen them put that piping in. As far as it goes with the engineering department and the money they have and all of that stuff, I'm utility. But we do work closely with every single entity throughout the city. We have our own engineering departments, and they're in constant contact with public work and different building areas and everything like that as to try to make things right.
Without getting too far off track, that's the swale program is underneath Public Works. We'll talk after. I know that they've got a website just specifically about that program. I can at least put you in touch with the right person, if that's helpful. Yeah, the city's so big, we have so many different departments. We are very specifically just water and sewer. And that swale system is a whole different department. So unfortunately, we can't speak too much to that, but we are interconnected. You're right. But I can, right. But we'll talk after. Anybody else have any more questions before we kind of review what we went over today? We good? Yeah. Back row. Gotta be the back row, right? It's fine. It's cool. Here you go.
I'm interested to know if the utility department has a commitment to minimum supply pressure at the customer point of use. Well, for instance, at my house, although I haven't put a gauge on it, I only get a very small stream of water from any of our faucets. And, I'm considering putting in a booster station simply to raise the pressure. And before I do that, I'm curious to know what the water department feels is the minimum supply pressure.
So in that instance, you might want to call customer service, our 1-800 number, and have us come out and take a look at it, because we can get our cross connection crew out there to make sure that the pressure after your water meter is adequate. Sometimes we can get clogs in the lines, and it's something that can be fixed if you just give customer service a call.
Just so you know, we don't drop pressure, right? What we normally run out of our plants is 75 to 82 psi. Is what we run out of the plants. Coming to a customer's home through the system, it's usually about 55 to 70 psi in that range. And what Sean was talking about, we have these corporations that are on the pipe. That's what makes a connection from the main pipe into your home. Call them up, 873-6400. They can come out. We'll come out, make sure that you make the mention that you have low water pressure. We'll come out and check that corp stop prior to the meter on the opposite side of the meter, and we'll make sure there's no need for a booster pump. I would definitely call, and all of that would be free of charge. There's no cost involved in that. So I would definitely give them a call and see what they can do for you.
I'm curious if the effort to flush and chlorinate has or is considered a solution to the buildup of biofilm.
So pretty much when we do our free chlorination and our flushing, we are getting rid of any biofilm that is in the distribution system pipes. It's a preemptive practice. We're not doing it. We're not doing it because we're doing it to prevent biofilm from growing.
Yes, folks, and everybody at your seats today, you've got a 2-pager. Sorry to use so much paper, but I figured it'd be easy just to take it home with you. But this was the press release that was sent out about the free chlorine and flushing program. There's frequently asked questions. A lot of what we went over today is in these 2 pages. You're going to leave here and go, wait, what did they say? So I wanted you all to leave with the information that we went over today. But our main number is down at the bottom of that first page. So again, it's 772-873-6400. You can also email, I'm out of breath. Whew. You can also email our connection support office by sending an email to utility@cityofpsl.com. So they're available and they respond to that email Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So if you ever have any questions, if you want to talk to Sean, I'll give you his number. No, you call that main number and then they can get the messages too. But again, if you have low water pressure, like this gentleman was describing, if you have something that just seems off at your house, call us first. Don't call a plumber. They'll charge you. We won't. Just call us first. If there's anything that seems off, if you have any questions, I'll give you my number. But again, we have the main number and everything available on this information for you. We mentioned that water quality report. We have hard copies in the back, but you can also find it at www.cityofpsl.com/utility. So we've got that for you. And then we mentioned a little bit about this because we are in hurricane season. So back there's a 1-pager as you walk out, just with some tips on what to do water and sewer wise during a hurricane. So if there are no more questions, thank you all so much. You got... Oh, yeah. Wait, do you have a question? What was your question?
Just an observation. The need for another microphone is stunning.
I know. Yes, it's on my list. It is on my list. Yes, we will be getting 2 microphones. So again, folks, just to review, free chlorine starts tomorrow and runs through July 22nd. Again, during this time, you may notice just a slight chlorine taste or odor in your water. You just kind of pour it, you let it sit out, it'll dissipate. Again, this program will be continued on an annual basis. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free. Make sure you fill out your post questions and your survey about the presentation today. You can leave that right on the table and we'll come get it from you. Thank you all so much. Big hand for our presenters. Yay.